Here is the reimagined story, crafted as a captivating narrative in 250 paragraphs. The moment I laid eyes on Cassandra Sinclair, I knew my life would never be the same. It was our sophomore year at Belmont University, and she breezed into the lecture hall like a vision straight out of my dreams. Her luxurious auburn hair cascaded over her shoulders, framing a face so beautiful it made my heart ache. But it was her vivid blue eyes, sparkling with intelligence and mischief, that truly captivated me. From the very first hello, Cassie and I were inseparable. We could talk for hours about anything and everything, from the meaning of life to the most trivial aspects of pop culture. She had a razor-sharp wit and an infectious laugh that never failed to brighten my day. I found myself constantly amazed by her brilliant mind and lively spirit. As the weeks turned into months, I fell hopelessly in love with Cassandra. She wasn't just breathtakingly gorgeous with her willowy figure and mile-long legs. No, it was her vibrant personality, her boundless enthusiasm for life, that truly set her apart. I knew without a doubt that I wanted to spend the rest of my days by her side. One fateful night, 3 months into our whirlwind romance, Cassie gave me the most precious gift of all. In the backseat of my beat-up Chevy, parked behind the deserted town baseball diamond, she offered me her innocence. As we moved together under the starlit sky, I experienced a profound sense of connection and overwhelming love. It was the single most incredible moment of my young life. From that point on, I never doubted that Cassie and I were destined to be together forever. I couldn't imagine a future without her luminous presence by my side. We were two halves of the same soul, bound by an unbreakable bond of love and devotion. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ethan Gallagher, but most folks just call me Gall. I hail from a decent-sized town smack dab in the heart of the American Midwest. Standing at an even 6 feet and tipping the scales at a lean 187 pounds, I've been told I'm not too hard on the eyes. My sandy brown hair and warm hazel eyes seem to draw people in, though I like to think it's my easygoing personality that really does the trick. I make my living as a contractor, running a small but successful company alongside a crew of 5 skilled employees. We've carved out a niche doing high-end interior remodels for well-heeled clients who appreciate our keen eye for detail and craftsmanship. It's rewarding work, and I take pride in the stellar reputation we've built. Cassie, my beloved wife, is a music teacher at the local high school. She has an uncanny ability to coax the most beautiful melodies out of even the most reluctant students. Together, we've built a comfortable life filled with laughter, love, and the simple joys of each other's company. Now in our early 30s, Cassie and I are eagerly looking forward to starting a family of our own. We often spend lazy Sunday mornings daydreaming about the pitter-patter of little feet and the sweet chaos of parenthood. I know in my heart that Cassie will be the most amazing mother, just as she's been the most incredible partner. Over the course of our decade-long marriage, I can honestly say that Cassie and I have been deliriously happy. Sure, I won't claim that we were burning up the sheets twice a day, every day. But we made love often, at least 3 times a week, and each encounter was infused with tenderness and passion. Every night, without fail, we would drift off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, savoring the warmth and comfort of our unbreakable bond. Each morning, I would awaken to the sight of Cassie's angelic face on the pillow beside me, and a profound sense of gratitude would wash over me. How did I get so damn lucky? I'd wonder, marveling at the incredible woman who had chosen to share her life with me. In those quiet moments, I knew with absolute certainty that I would gladly lay down my life for Cassandra, without hesitation or regret. Looking back now, I realize I should have phrased that sentiment in the past tense. You see, not long ago, something completely blindsided me, a revelation so devastating and emotionally overwhelming that even now, I'm not sure I've fully recovered from the blow. In my line of work as a contractor in the Midwest, the bulk of our projects take place during the milder months of spring, summer, and fall. Most folks aren't keen on having their homes torn apart in the dead of winter, when the mercury plummets and 3 feet of snow blanket the ground. As a result, Cassie and I typically planned our getaways for the Christmas and New Year's holidays or during her spring break from teaching. During the summer months, when I was up to my eyeballs in work, Cassie would often take a week to visit her parents, indulge in a shopping trip with her sisters, or attend seminars to keep her teaching credentials current. But our favorite winter escape was always to some sun-drenched, tropical paradise, where we could shed our layers and bask in the warmth of each other's company. That fateful winter, we had chosen an all-inclusive resort in the Bahamas for our annual getaway. 2 blissful weeks of white sand beaches, crystal clear waters, and lazy days spent reconnecting body and soul. It was supposed to be a slice of heaven on earth, a chance to recharge and reignite the spark of our love. Little did I know just how wrong I was. As Cassie and I boarded the plane at Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport, I had absolutely no inkling that anything was amiss in our marriage. If someone had even hinted at the possibility, I would have called them a bold-faced liar and likely introduced their face to my fist. That's how confident I was in the strength of our bond, how utterly convinced I was that Cassie and I were the perfect couple, 2 hearts beating as one. The first inkling that something might be off came as we stood in line for the security checkpoint at the airport. The queue was long, with scores of winter-weary travelers eager to escape the bone-chilling cold for more tropical climes. As we inched forward, waiting our turn to pass through the metal detectors, I noticed a man in the adjacent line casting furtive glances in Cassie's direction. Now, my wife is a stunning woman, and I'm used to her turning heads wherever we go. But there was something different about the way this guy was looking at her, a sense of familiarity and intent that set my spidey senses tingling. I pretended to be engrossed in double-checking our boarding passes, all the while keeping a watchful eye on the stranger. As I observed him more closely, I realized that his glances toward Cassie were anything but casual. They were sly, almost conspiratorial, as if he was trying to catch her attention without drawing too much notice. And then, I saw it. Cassie glanced back at him, her expression unreadable, and made a subtle gesture with her hand, as if to say, "Not now." The man smiled knowingly and gave a slight nod, and a cold sense of dread began to unfurl in the pit of my stomach. It was clear that they knew each other, though to what extent I couldn't be sure. But that brief, wordless exchange was enough to set off all sorts of alarm bells in my head. As we made our way through security, I kept a close eye on both Cassie and the mystery man, but there were no further attempts at communication between them. I grew quiet, lost in my own swirling thoughts and suspicions, hoping against hope that Cassie wouldn't notice the change in my demeanor. I silently prayed that the man wasn't on our flight, that this was all just some bizarre coincidence and not the harbinger of something more sinister. But as we boarded the plane and took our seats, my hopes were dashed. There he was, sitting in an aisle seat about 15 rows ahead of us, his face buried in a magazine. It struck me as odd that Cassie had chosen the aisle seat in our row, rather than her usual preference for the window. She loved to watch the world fall away as the plane took off, to gaze out at the fluffy clouds and the patchwork landscape below. When I questioned her about the change, mentioning that I had specifically booked the window seat for her, she brushed it off, claiming she wasn't feeling well and didn't want to disturb anyone if she needed to use the restroom. Unconvinced but not wanting to push the issue, I asked the person in the aisle seat if they would mind switching to the window, explaining that my wife was dealing with some stomach issues. They agreed without hesitation, and I settled into the middle seat, my mind still churning with unease. Normally, I have no trouble sleeping on a plane, especially during longer flights like the one from Minneapolis to Miami. But in my heightened state of anxiety and suspicion, slumber was out of the question, even as I feigned otherwise. We stowed our carry-on bags in the overhead compartment, and Cassie tucked her purse under the seat in front of her. Once we were airborne, I donned my favorite baseball cap, a well-worn relic from my college days, and pulled the brim down low over my forehead, pretending to doze off. But I left just enough of a gap to keep a surreptitious eye on Cassie, my senses on high alert for any further signs of unusual behavior. About 15 minutes into the flight, I watched through barely open eyes as Cassie glanced down at me, apparently checking to see if I was asleep. Satisfied that I was out cold, she unbuckled her seatbelt and rose from her seat, making her way toward the rear of the plane where the restrooms were located. I shifted slightly in my seat, angling myself so I had a clear view of the entire aisle. As Cassie passed by the row where her alleged acquaintance was seated, I saw her reach out as if to steady herself, her hand briefly brushing against his shoulder. It was a small gesture, easily missed by the untrained eye, but to me, it was further confirmation that there was more to their relationship than mere coincidence. I noted that they didn't exchange any overt glances or words, and Cassie continued on to the restroom without incident. A few minutes later, she emerged and began making her way back to our row. But as she approached the man's seat, he suddenly stood up and stepped into the aisle, blocking her path. Instead of one of them stepping aside to let the other pass, as would be the polite thing to do, they stood there facing each other, their bodies mere inches apart. The man placed his hand on Cassie's waist, a gesture that was far too intimate for casual acquaintances. To my horror, Cassie responded by resting her hand on his chest, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. They remained like that for a moment, gazing into each other's eyes, before Cassie finally moved to step around him. As she did, the man's hand slid down to her backside, giving it a quick squeeze. Cassie's smile widened, and she continued on her way, leaving me to stare after her in stunned disbelief. There was no denying it now. Cassie and this man knew each other, and their relationship was clearly more than platonic. The casual touches, the secretive glances, the lingering looks, it all added up to one inescapable conclusion. My wife, the love of my life, was involved with another man. As the realization crashed over me like a tidal wave, I felt as though the very foundation of my world had been ripped out from under me. The pain was so intense, so all-consuming, that I had to turn away from Cassie as she slid back into her seat and refastened her seatbelt. I couldn't bear to look at her, couldn't stand the thought of seeing the face I adored so much, knowing that she had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. Questions swirled through my mind, each one more agonizing than the last. How long had this affair been going on right under my nose? Who was this man, and what did he have that I didn't? How far had they taken things, and was our entire marriage nothing but a sham? For the remainder of the flight, I grappled with the weight of my newfound knowledge, trying desperately to make sense of a situation that defied all logic and reason. I clung to the faint hope that perhaps the man wouldn't be on our connecting flight to Nassau, that maybe this was all just a terrible misunderstanding and not the death knell of my marriage. But deep down, in the shattered remains of my heart, I knew better. And as we boarded the plane to the Bahamas, my worst fears were confirmed. There he was, sitting just a few rows behind us, his nose buried in the in-flight magazine as if he didn't have a care in the world. He paid no attention to Cassie and me as we took our seats, Cassie once again opting for the window. The short flight from Miami to Nassau was mercifully uneventful, and soon we were touching down in paradise. We collected our luggage, picked up our rental car, and set off for the resort, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. As I navigated the unfamiliar roads, Cassie sat beside me, her fingers flying over her phone as she typed out text after text. Unable to contain my curiosity any longer, I asked, "Who are you messaging so intently?" Cassie glanced up, a flicker of guilt crossing her features before she quickly schooled her expression into one of nonchalance. "Oh, just my mom and sisters, letting them know we arrived safely," she replied, her tone a little too bright, a little too casual. I nodded, my jaw clenching as I fought back the urge to demand to see her phone for myself. It was funny, in a twisted sort of way, how suspicion could take root in your mind and grow like a weed, choking out all reason and trust. When we finally arrived at the resort, I had to admit that our room was pretty amazing. Spacious and airy, with a private balcony boasting stunning views of the turquoise ocean and the lush gardens surrounding the pool area. It was the kind of place that, under normal circumstances, would have taken my breath away and filled me with a sense of peace and contentment. But as Cassie and I unpacked our bags in silence, the weight of my newfound knowledge hung heavy in the air between us. I knew I needed to do something, to say something, to try to salvage what was left of our relationship before it was too late. So I approached Cassie from behind, wrapping my arms around her waist and pulling her close. I nuzzled her neck, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, and murmured, "Do you have any idea how much I love you, Cass?" She stiffened slightly in my embrace before turning to face me, a tight smile on her lips as she pressed a quick, perfunctory kiss to my mouth. "I love you too, babe," she said, but there was a distant look in her eyes, as if she wasn't fully present in the moment with me. A chill ran down my spine at her lackluster response, but I pressed on, determined to fight for our love. You know I would never do anything to hurt you, right? That I would move heaven and earth to make you happy? Cassie flinched at my words, and I saw tears beginning to well up in her eyes. I know that, Ethan, she whispered, her gaze dropping to the floor. And you know that I would never do anything to jeopardize our marriage, don't you? I swallowed hard, my heart clenching at the blatant lie. Of course, Cass. I trust you implicitly. The words tasted like ashes in my mouth, and I had to force them out past the lump in my throat. She flinched again, and a single tear slid down her cheek as she continued to avoid my gaze. I know, babe. You know I wouldn't betray that trust. But even as she spoke the words, I could tell she didn't believe them any more than I did. The cracks in our once solid foundation were widening by the second, and I knew that if she hadn't already been unfaithful, it was only a matter of time before she crossed that line. I released her from my embrace and hurried to the bathroom, desperate to escape the suffocating tension that had settled over the room. I barely made it inside before the first sob tore its way out of my throat, and I had to brace myself against the sink as my body shook with the force of my grief. I stayed in there for a long time, trying to regain some semblance of composure, my mind spinning with the same agonizing questions over and over again. How had it come to this? What had I done to drive Cassie into the arms of another man? Why hadn't I seen the signs earlier, before it was too late to fix what was broken between us? But the question that haunted me most, the one that I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried, was this: what could I do to save our marriage, or was it already beyond repair? Eventually, I managed to pull myself together enough to splash some cold water on my face and take a few deep, steadying breaths. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, Cassie was waiting for me, an unreadable expression on her face. Ethan, I just got my period, she blurted out, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. And I didn't bring any tampons. I can't believe I forgot to pack them. I blinked at her, momentarily thrown by the abrupt change in topic. What? But didn't you just have your period last week? How is that possible? Cassie shrugged, avoiding my gaze. I don't know, but it happens sometimes. Maybe the stress of the trip triggered it or something. All I know is that I need to run to the gift shop and pick up some supplies. I frowned, a nagging suspicion taking root in the back of my mind. Cassie had always been as regular as clockwork, thanks to the birth control pills she took religiously. For her to suddenly start her period again so soon after the last one was highly unusual, to say the least. But before I could question her further, she was grabbing her purse and heading for the door, mumbling something about being back in a few minutes. As the door closed behind her, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying to me, that this was all just a convenient excuse to get away from me and spend time with her lover. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Maybe this supposed period was a blessing in disguise, a way to slow down the progression of their illicit romance, at least for a little while. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Cassie had never experienced such irregularity before, and she was always diligent about taking her pills. Why would she suddenly lie about something like this? Unless she thought that having her period would deter me from seeking physical intimacy with her, freeing her up to focus all of her passion and desire on her new man. The thought made my stomach churn with a sickening combination of rage and despair. If that was truly her plan, then she was even more cunning and cruel than I had ever imagined. No one, not even the woman I had loved for over a decade, could be that manipulative and heartless. To let me plan and pay for this romantic getaway, all the while plotting to use it as a cover to indulge in her sordid affair, it was beyond the pale. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, like everything I had ever known and believed in was crumbling to dust before my very eyes. Who was this stranger masquerading as my beloved wife? How could I have been so blind, so utterly fooled by her deception? As I stood there, reeling from the weight of my realization, my gaze fell on Cassie's phone, which she had left lying on the dresser next to the TV. With trembling fingers, I reached for it and tapped the screen, half expecting her to have changed her passcode to keep me out. But to my surprise, the phone unlocked easily, revealing her home screen. Another rookie mistake on her part, I thought bitterly as I navigated to her text messages, my heart pounding in my chest as I scrolled through the list of conversations. And there it was, a thread of messages from someone named Liam Delaney. I tapped on his name with a sense of dread, my eyes scanning the words that sealed the fate of my marriage. I scrolled back to the beginning of their conversation, which seemed to have started right around the time we were driving to the resort. My blood boiled as I read the flirtatious banter between them, the casual intimacy of their exchanges. Liam, hey gorgeous, I caught a glimpse of you at the airport. You look absolutely stunning, as always. Can't wait to get my hands on you. Cassie, you naughty boy, you almost got us caught by Ethan. I swear, you're going to be the death of me. Liam, what can I say, babe? You're irresistible. I almost kissed you right there in the aisle of the plane. The things you do to me. Cassie, I have to admit, I did enjoy that little squeeze you gave my ass. Consider it a sneak preview of what's to come. Winking face. But we have to be careful, Liam. Ethan was fast asleep, but you never know who might be watching. Their conversation continued in a similar vein after we arrived at the resort, with Liam growing increasingly impatient to get Cassie alone. Liam, I'm in the lobby, babe. Are you here yet? I'm dying to see you. Cassie, we just got to our room. Ethan's in the bathroom, and he's acting really strange. I think he might suspect something. Liam, who cares about him? When are you going to leave that loser so I can have you all to myself? Cassie, I've told you from the beginning, Tony, I can't and won't do that. Ethan is a good man, and he loves me. He provides for me and gives me a life that you never could. Liam, but I'm bigger and better than he is, in every way that counts. I satisfy you like he never could, and you know it. Cassie, you're right, no one makes me feel the way you do, baby. You take me to heights of pleasure that Ethan could never even dream of. But he and I are planning to start a family soon, so these next 2 weeks are just for us. I told him I would stop taking my birth control pills when we get home, but the truth is, I stopped taking them 3 weeks ago. So if you play your cards right, you might just get me pregnant. Imagine Ethan raising your baby, never knowing the truth. Liam, damn, Cassie, you're a wild one. I like the way you think. I'll make sure to put a baby in that belly of yours, just you wait and see. Cassie, I can't wait to feel you. You get me so hot, Liam. Liam, what about Ethan, though? How can you be sure he won't knock you up too? Cassie, oh, he won't be getting any action from me, trust me. I'm going to tell him that my period started unexpectedly and that it's probably going to last the whole trip. The poor sap will never know the difference. Liam, you sure he'll buy that? Seems like a pretty flimsy excuse. Cassie, positive. He trusts me completely, and he knows I would never lie to him. Besides, I'll make it up to him when we get back home. I'll be the perfect little wife, and he'll be none the wiser. Liam, God, he's such a chump. I almost feel sorry for the guy. Almost. Cassie, hey, what did I tell you about talking about my husband like that? You keep it up, and you can kiss this sweet ass goodbye for good. Liam, all right, I'll play nice. For now. Meet me in the lobby in 10. I need to get my hands on you before I explode. I stood there, numb with shock and disbelief, the phone nearly slipping from my fingers as the full weight of Cassie's betrayal crashed over me. It was worse than I ever could have imagined, a twisted web of lies and deceit that made a mockery of our entire marriage. Not only was she cheating on me with this Liam character, but she was actively trying to get pregnant with his child, all while planning to pass it off as mine. The depths of her cruelty and manipulation knew no bounds, and I felt a wave of nausea rising in my throat at the thought of it. For a moment, I considered swapping her phone with mine, in case I needed the messages as evidence in the inevitable divorce proceedings. But then a surge of anger and disgust washed over me, and I thought, to hell with her. Let her dig her own way out of this mess she's created. My phone contained all of my personal information, my contacts, my entire life. I wasn't about to hand that over to a lying, cheating snake like Cassie. No, she had made her bed, and now she could lie in it, for all I cared. So I held onto both phones, mine and hers, knowing that she would notice hers missing soon enough. But by the time she did, I would be long gone, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. The reality of the situation hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt bile rising in my throat, choking me. I staggered over to the window, desperate for air, and gazed out at the breathtaking view of the Caribbean Sea, the very picture of paradise. Just a few short hours ago, I had been the happiest man alive, looking forward to 2 blissful weeks in the sun with the woman I adored, the woman I had pledged my life and my love to. And now, in the blink of an eye, my entire world had shattered around me, leaving me lost and alone in the wreckage of my marriage. I had never felt so betrayed, so utterly devastated, in all my life. The pain was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a searing agony that threatened to consume me whole. And beneath that pain, a white-hot rage began to build, a burning desire to hurt Cassie and Liam the way they had hurt me, to make them pay for their treachery. As I stood there, lost in my own dark thoughts, my gaze happened to drift down to the pool area below. And there, wrapped in a passionate embrace, were Cassie and Liam, their bodies entwined as they kissed with a fervor that made my stomach turn. I watched, transfixed with horror and disgust, as Liam's hands roamed over Cassie's body, groping and squeezing in a way that was far too intimate for public display. It was too much, too raw and painful to witness. I wanted to look away, to run and hide from the awful truth that was staring me in the face. But I couldn't tear my eyes from the sickening spectacle, couldn't stop watching as the woman I loved betrayed me in the most heinous way imaginable. I stood there, frozen in place, my mind reeling as I tried to process the enormity of what had just happened. My wife, my soulmate, the woman I had built my entire life around, she was nothing more than a lying, cheating whore, a snake in the grass who had played me for a fool. The pain of her betrayal was like a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I felt like I was drowning, like the very foundations of my world had crumbled beneath my feet, leaving me flailing in an ocean of despair. But even as the anguish threatened to consume me, a cold, hard fury began to take root in the pit of my stomach. I wasn't going to let Cassie and her lover get away with this, wasn't going to stand by and watch as they made a mockery of our marriage and our life together. No, I was going to make them pay for what they had done, was going to rain down hell on their heads and watch as they drowned in the wreckage of their own making. I didn't know how or when, but one thing was for damn sure. Cassandra Sinclair was about to learn the true meaning of the old saying, "Hell hath no fury like a man scorned." With a newfound sense of purpose, I turned away from the window and strode over to the dresser where I had left my video camera, the one I had bought specifically for this trip. I had envisioned using it to capture all the happy memories Cassie and I would make together, the laughter and the love and the sheer joy of being in each other's company. But now, as I picked up the camera and checked the battery and memory card, I knew it would serve a very different purpose. I was going to use it to document every sordid detail of Cassie's affair, to gather the evidence I needed to blow her picture-perfect life to smithereens. Cassie must not have realized that our room had a direct view of the pool area, a fact that I was going to use to my full advantage. The camera had a powerful zoom lens, one that would allow me to capture even the most intimate moments between her and Liam in crystal clear detail. It made me sick to my stomach to think about what I was about to do, to know that I was going to have to watch my wife in the throes of passion with another man. But I steeled myself against the revulsion and the pain, knowing that it was a necessary evil if I wanted to make Cassie pay for her betrayal. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. But my mind was spinning, my thoughts scattered and disjointed as I tried to wrap my head around the sheer magnitude of what had happened. I felt like I was going to be sick, like the very foundations of my being had been ripped out from under me, leaving me adrift in a sea of pain and confusion. But even through the haze of my anguish, one thing was crystal clear. I had to find a way to keep Cassie and Liam apart, to throw a wrench into their sordid little love affair. If I could just buy myself some time, I could figure out my next move, could come up with a way to make them both suffer the way they had made me suffer. The first step was to figure out how they planned to keep me occupied while they were off enjoying their little trysts. I had no doubt that they had some kind of system in place, some way of ensuring that I would be out of the way while they were busy getting busy. As I pondered this, a thought occurred to me, a simple but effective plan that just might work. Cassie wanted 2 weeks alone with her lover, 2 weeks to try and conceive a child that she could pass off as mine. And I wanted revenge, wanted to make her pay for the way she had shattered my heart and my life. So why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Why not give Cassie exactly what she wanted, but on my terms, not hers? If I could find a way to keep them apart during the day, to throw a monkey wrench into their carefully laid plans, then I could buy myself the time I needed to put my own plan into action. The end of the first part. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion in the next video. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell button to be notified about